Turn-based combat is an interesting gameplay style that's easy to replicate but hard to really make work. And I'm about to tell you about some franchises that have tried to pull this off, both with some success, some not so much. And some of these, you're probably not gonna expect. Hey y'all, it's me Crimson, it's good to see you again. Still got a bit of a cold here, now I think it's more allergies than anything, but I'm still gonna come at you with 6 franchises that have taken a swing at turn-based combat. Let's get into it. Yeah, I wanted to start this list off with probably the most insane discovery while I was doing this video. Like, I didn't even know this existed until I made this. Developed for the Nintendo GameCube, Yu-Gi-Oh! The False Bound Kingdom is a game where you take the role of either Yugi or Kaiba, and from what I understand later on Joey, and they are stuck in a virtual world where you control a team of monsters in a gameplay mix of real-time strategy and turn-based combat to defeat the vast enemies before you in an effort to defeat the game's main villain, Emperor Hashin. Yeah, I'm not messing with you in the slightest. This is all actually real and the plot to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Game. I've never touched it myself, so I'm not sure how I feel about it, but from what I've seen of things like reviews, it seems opinion of this game is kind of split down the middle. While there are people who absolutely loved how different it was from several other Yu-Gi-Oh! Games, and a fair number were also impressed by its graphics, the other side hated how slow the game felt. They felt like the game was just way too slow, it was boring, and that the turn-based gameplay should not have been paired with something like Yu-Gi-Oh! What about you guys? Did you play this? I'm a big Yu-Gi-Oh! Fan, so let me know if you like it in the comments. I'm honestly really curious to hear thoughts about people who touched it, rather than just reading reviews online. Yeah, so this one is probably a bit more well-known than the first pick on this list, but let's just say not for good reasons. But in case you didn't know, I'll fill you in. So the 2000s era of gaming wasn't exactly the best time for everyone's favorite blue blur. For every game they dropped that was a hit, something came along that just fucked over all that goodwill. And while it's much better now, Sonic had a lot to deal with back then. And alas, Sonic and the Dark Brotherhood was one of those misses. Now, if I'm honest, I love the idea of a Sonic turn-based game. I grew up with those Final Fantasy Sonic Flash games and absolutely adored them, and I really wanted something like it. But what we got was not a great adventure. The game was riddled with problems like an annoying movement system, pretty lazy UI, and combat that somehow feels clunkier than the Flash games you could play on Newgrounds. But even with those problems, I honestly think this game deserves a sequel. Yeah, it wasn't great, like, at all, but I do believe turn-based Sonic could work very well. It just needs a lot more focus and more personality than the first game had. I've been on this one a long time, let's get to the next one. Alright, now we're on to the obligatory Dragon Ball one. So, unlike the first 2 games, Dragon Ball has dabbled far more into the whole RPG style of gameplay, but they have placed much more of a focus on action RPGs instead of turn-based ones. Makes sense. Dragon Ball characters are flying around battling each other in the sky all the time, so it wouldn't really make a huge amount of sense for them to be turn-based. So you can imagine my surprise when I was doing research and learned this was a real thing. So I decided to emulate it to give it a try, and I gotta say that it's pretty good in all honesty. It's probably one of the best games on this list. Not that it's like godly or anything like that, just that it does a better job at standing out in comparison to most of the other games on here, which kind of just took their IP and gave it turn-based combat. An example of this is, while this game starts from right after Goku defeats King Piccolo, instead of focusing something like Goku's training with Popo, you instead take the roles of Tien, Krillin, and Yamcha and play through their own set of training stories, which branches out onto multiple mini-arcs that surprisingly work very well in fitting into the canon of OG Dragon Ball. Enough to where I could actually hear someone say this was canon and I wouldn't really argue with them. There's also a surprisingly large amount of enemy types, to the point where it's nearly on par with multiple other games like Final Fantasy or even Kingdom Hearts. And while the gameplay isn't all too special, It's still impressive how much effort was put into this game despite it not turning out super successful. I'm definitely hoping a sequel appears one day. Would love to see how they improve upon it. Honestly, one of the best parts about doing these kinds of videos, other than making y'all happy of course, is when you do research on them, it's kind of wild the things you discover that have existed in the past. Like the fact that there was not one, but two Naruto turn-based RPGs. Yeah, Naruto got 2 of these before any other game on the list. That is wild to me. I'm actually doing a playthrough for the first game right now in my downtime on my emulator. And to be honest, it's not horrible, but it's got some pretty rough edges. No insult to the creators, of course. I can tell that they wanted to do something new with the franchise after pretty much every Naruto game before seemed to either be a fighting game or a beat 'em up. Could be more. I think there was like a Mario Party one that got released in Japan but not America. I'm not totally sure. I grew up with more Dragon Ball games than Naruto ones. Fuck it, I'm getting off topic. Anyways, back to the game. From what I've seen of it so far, it's fine. I do like the idea of it adding the ability to move your character along a row or two to add a bit more depth to the combat. Models could be better though, as they have these weird designs to their pixel overworld forms that tried to make them look as, humanistically canon as possible, but it's all scrunched up and it's weird. Other than that, it's kinda in the same vein as Attack of the Saiyans. A decent game held up more by the fact it's got a world famous IP attached to it. Maybe the sequel's far superior? I don't know. Yeah, I've talked about this bad boy before, and I'm gonna talk about it again. Why? Because you can't stop me, and gosh darn it, this game deserves way more love. Now, the X series was in a pretty rough spot around the time this game came out. X5 was pretty on the divisive side with some changes to the formula that people did not like. X6 was a rush mess of a game that disappointed pretty much everybody. And Mega Man X7 was... it was Mega Man X7. So our edgy blue bomber really needed a success. So they decided to take the next game and make it something entirely different. And while I'm not totally sure why they chose it to make it a turn-based RPG, I'm still glad they did. I've always thought it's neat when game creators take IPs and make them something completely out of their comfort zone. And thankfully, this game ended up being a lot of fun as a result. Like a lot of the other games on this list, it's mainly held up by the fact it's turn-based instead of a fast-paced platformer like Mega Man games usually are. It certainly understood what it was going for in comparison to games like Sonic and the Dark Brotherhood and Naruto Path of the Ninja, although that's probably due to being on a home console instead of the DS, which allowed them to have more content and far improved graphics. Like Attack of the Saiyans and Sonic and the Dark Brotherhood, I think this game really should get a sequel one day. I would love to see what a second game could bring to the table. So this exists. I know, I'm just as shocked as you are, maybe even just as shocked as the Yu-Gi-Oh one. Now I'm gonna be totally honest, I have never seen a single thing from Lord of the Rings. I've never read any books, and I've never seen any movies. The only exposure I've ever had to it is clips on YouTube, random people mentioning it in review videos, and that Gollum game I got to try at my friend's house that makes me want to tear my eye sockets out. But after seeing this game, I gotta admit I am a little more interested, even if this is, all apparently non-canon. The game is basically a full-on copy of Final Fantasy X, which is also something I've never played as well. Maybe after we play Final Fantasy 16, I'll play that on stream. It would be kind of fun. Also, from what I understand, this one is very well received, on the same level of even Attack of the Saiyans and Mega Man X Command Mission. Sorry if this part seems kind of like fluff, but it's pretty hard to make sense of this due to not really being knowledgeable on Lord of the Rings. Plus, there's not really a whole lot to find on it, so it's kind of hard to make a full stake on this. But from what I can find, it's a pretty damn good game that fans of the series will definitely enjoy. And that brings us to the end of the video. This one was yet another blast to make for you all. There are probably a ton more series that do have turn-based combat games that I may have missed, so I may do a video on the future if I ever come across more of them. Or if this video gets like 1K views or something, I don't know. If you want to see that along with all sorts of other content shenanigans, do me a solid and drop a sub and a like. That's all for now. See y'all next time. Have a lovely day.